Welcome back, everybody, to an episode of Slam Talk Sports. I'm your host, as always, Mr. Darcy Slam Duncan, and boy, oh boy, do we have a big round of football to preview. Round 2, some massive games to talk about. There was a huge game last night at the MCG as those damn Hawks, those jailbird Hawks, took down the Sydney Swans by the tune of 17 points. It was an inaccurate Hawthorn side, but they thoroughly deserved the win after outplaying Sydney for large portions of the last 3 quarters. We'll talk about that in a second. We'll preview the big game tonight, which is Adelaide taking on the Western Bulldogs over at the Adelaide Oval. But before we get into all of that, you know where to find me. It is Slam Talk Sports on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, and on social media. You know where I am. You know who I am by now. Instagram, TikTok, and of course, X, where I'll be posting all my bets and my SuperCoach trades for the round. A lot of SuperCoach trades, a lot of carnage to unpack and dissect over the coming hours, a lot to talk about. Let's quickly touch on last night's game. The Hawks go out 17-point winners against the Sydney Swans. From my eyes, the biggest difference makers in that game was Hawthorn's midfield working into the game in the second half. It was the likes of McKenzie, it was the likes of Newcomb, really lifting the team, and that Hawthorn midfield, which has been a bit beleaguered in the last few rounds. I know they played well against a relatively poor Essendon side. They got smashed in the guts against the GWS Giants in opening round, but I did see signs of improvement. I know the Swans won clearances quite easily early, but the Hawks worked themselves back into the game, and it was, of course, that back line. It was James Sicily, their co-captain. But for me, the best on-ground award was Tom Barrass, who embarrassed Charlie Curnow over the last 3 quarters. Curnow had, 3 goals in the first quarter, and then he had 3 touches for the rest of the game. It was a truly virtuoso performance from the defensive maestro, Tom Barrass, which really looks like that trade is panning out now quite well for the Hawks. Josh Battle, All-Australian last season. Tom Barrass in the All-Australian running for 2026. Hawks are looking okay. They're going just okay. And on the Sydney side of things, I mean, no Goulden and no Heaney. Errol Goulden will not play for the next 4 months. Isaac Heaney missed this round with hamstring soreness or hamstring awareness. Sydney now go into their bye 2-1, and they expect to have Heaney return on the other side for what looks like a tasty matchup against the West Coast Eagles in round 4. Hawthorn themselves have an 18-day break, similar to Carlton right now. They are enjoying an 18-day break, but Hawthorn will have a nice little rest before taking on, who is it in round 4? They take on the Cats. How big a game is that on Easter Monday? Last night's contest was, well, it was similar to an NBA game, let's be serious. 38-34 at quarter time, was that the score? It was an up and down footballing contest, not a lot of marks. I mean, 10 Sydney Swans didn't have a mark at half time as they employed a more handball-happy approach to try and break through the Hawks' defense. And it did work in the first half, but eventually the class of Hawthorn and how well they play that large ground, the MCG, was telling as they rounded out nearly 3 goal winners. It was a good game. Not going to read too much into it this early in the season, but I still think Sydney are premiership contenders if Goulden can come back and look something like himself. And Hawthorn have to be contenders, but there's always that big question mark, is that midfield, the depth isn't quite there, or the star talent. Now they've got some good players, in particular their co-captain, Jai Newcomb, but I'm just not sold on the Hawks to be better than the Gold Coast Suns or the Brisbane Lions right now. But I'm happy to be proven wrong. That was last night's game. Tonight, we head to the Adelaide Oval as we see the Crows host those damn Doggies. Yes, the Doggies look very impressive so far to start this season. The line is 1.5 points in the Dogs' favour, which tells me they've got no clue. They really do have no clue who is going to win this one. Big changes. Well, of course, Isaac Rankin returns for Adelaide, their star half-forward midfielder, after serving, a 4-game suspension? 4 games or 3 games? Hard to remember now. The AFL made it up on the fly for his homophobic slur against one of the Collingwood players in the back end of last year's season. He returns. He's one of the stars of this competition, and we can't wait to see what he can do in his pocket, at his oval. He seems to perform the absolute best at the Adelaide Oval and produces his greatest spells of wizardry. Can't wait to watch him play. Can't wait to watch, of course, the Bont ply his trade once again. He had a dominant game against the Adelaide Crows last season, 177 SuperCoach points, something like that. If you've got him in your team, he's an obvious vice-captain tonight, but I'm really keen to see how this stacked Dogs midfield goes against one of the strongest midfields in the comp in the Adelaide Crows. I'm not talking about player for player. I'm talking about biceps. I'm talking about girth. This is a very strong Adelaide Crows team, one of the best tackling teams in the comp. When they tackle you, you stay tackled. And they're also one of the great contested marking teams in the competition, as well as having probably the most dynamic forward half group there is in the AFL. They go up against a Doggies team which has been really stretched in past years defensively, but have looked quite strong so far through the first 2 rounds. It has been the improvement of their key defenders. It has been the addition of players like Selwood and Buderick, who weren't at the Dogs last year or who weren't playing for them last season, who've come on quite quickly to improve the defensive aspects of the Western Bulldogs game plan. Who would I be tipping? I'm probably going to just tip the Crows due to the home ground advantage and because of what I saw from them last week on Saturday night against Collingwood. They looked damn impressive in that game. And the Doggies, well, it's hard to trust them for too long. I say this about the Dogs. They're a very good team. They're highly talented. They've got superstars all across the board, but I don't know whether they have that consistency just yet for me to put them as the premiership contenders and go above someone like Adelaide, particularly at their home ground. Will be a great contest to watch from a SuperCoach side of things. Now, there is an option you could trade Hayden Young to. We're all pulling our hair out about what to do with Hayden Young. Even my friends, which are bald, and have been bald for years, still don't know what to do with Hayden Young. For mine, your number one trade target, like for like, would be someone like a Darcy Parish, who represents good value at $330,000. If you don't like Darcy Parish and you want to get a trade done this week, because you've got 3 trades in mind next week, then maybe a Tanner Brun wouldn't be the worst option. Tanner Brun will make you about $100,000, and you know he's going to play on the half-back line for the Crows, and he's played there, for the Cats, my apologies, and he's played there quite well over the first 2 rounds. He's given a lot of responsibility, a few kick-ins, but mainly that is like to use his skills off the half-back line and his run and dash and carry, which was crucial in the Cats' win last Saturday against Fremantle. If you don't want either of those options, you want to bank a bit of cash, or then Braden Cook does play tonight. He's only played the 1 game, but he was highly impressive on a wing and down the half-back line for the Crows last Saturday against Collingwood. He scored 90-odd points. There is a price rise coming. Job security seems okay. You look at Adelaide's team, you've got Chase Jones named as first emergency. He played on the wing in the preseason. It was a competition between him and Cook, who would probably get that starting wing half-back role. Cook has won it. Cook played very well on Saturday. I'm going to side with Cook. I don't think he's a bad trade in. If you don't own Milan Murdoch, I think Milan Murdoch would be above Cook just because of how lowly he's owned right now, which is sure to change over the coming days, but also the price point at $99,000. If he was to get dropped, which is highly unlikely considering how well he played, it won't hurt you too badly. If Cook gets dropped at $158,000, I think it was, then it will hurt a little bit more. So those would be my 2 options if you're looking to bank some cash from Hayden Young. Now, it is a little bit of a restructure because you are banking on, 85 to 90 points on a weekly basis from Hayden Young, but I do think these cash cows represent not only good value, but also good value for money considering the cash they will bring in. And you're trying to get maybe, $100,000 out of Hayden Young. I think you're definitely going to get that with these 2 players, provided they get through 3 to 4 games. Hayden Young doesn't seem to be able to do that, unfortunately. He played, I think, about 5 games last season. He was very good the year before, playing almost every round, but it does seem like these persistent and reoccurring soft tissue injuries are coming. They're coming more frequently for Youngie, which is really unfortunate considering how highly talented he is and how good he is in SuperCoach on a points per minute basis. I'd be trading him out. We made an error picking him. It's time to correct that error. If you want to do it this week like me, you can. If you want to wait 1 week to see where it lands, see what cash cows are likely to rise in price and what mid prices are looking the most tasty coming off their buys, then I don't mind that either. But if you want to be aggressive and you want to get on the front foot and hit this damn Hayden Young pie right over the bowler's head for 6, then I would recommend trading him out this round. Let's look forward to this Saturday afternoon games. We've got Richmond taking on the Gold Coast Suns. Richmond are currently $5 in that game. Gold Coast Suns are favoured by 34 points. I think that might be unders. I know Gold Coast aren't the best travelling team, but geez, they look like they are firing on all cylinders right now. They look like Ferrari if Ferrari had competent management. If they had a competent staff looking after their car, then they would be the Gold Coast Suns, because Dimmer is one of the best coaches in the league, and he coaches against his old team as well on Saturday at 1:15. Also, get there early and get there just in general, because it will be a relatively sparse crowd, let's be honest, between Richmond and the Gold Coast. But they will be honouring West Coburg's finest, Brandon Ellis, the two-time premiership star for the Richmond Football Club. He'll be having a lap of honour, I think, and obviously some sort of celebration and ovation for his efforts for Richmond and the Gold Coast Suns. So make sure you get down to the MCG to enjoy this one. SuperCoach side of things, well, we all own Christian Petrarca. He's in over 70% of sides. We own Leo Lombard as well. If you're looking to trade out someone like an Errol Goulden, my personal opinion would be to get Noah Anderson. This is a tasty matchup for Noah Anderson. He plays Melbourne off his bye as well, which is his bye is next week. He's not quite expensive as Marcus Bontempelli. I mean, Noah Anderson is $619,000. Bont is a touch over $700K. That $80,000 represents a lot of money you can spend next week, or to upgrade a shitty mid-price player to a premium who is underpriced. So that's my only reason why I'd go Ando over Bont. You can't really go wrong with these two players. They're both magnificent top line scorers. Yeah, I think the Gold Coast will easily take care of Richmond. I think that 33-point line might actually be unders. And if you're looking for players to maybe put some disposals or goal bets on, Anderson's the obvious one. I don't mind Will Powell as well. He had a team-high CBAs last week for the Gold Coast Suns. Took Miller had a very good last quarter on SuperCoach, scored about 40-odd points. Just in general, I think their midfielders will have a pretty nice day against Richmond, and also their forwards. Let's be serious. Ben King will kick a couple of goals. Christian Petrarca kicked 3, I think, last week. I mean, he's going to kick 2 to 3 most weeks if he's playing this role where he just gets as much CBAs as he wants, then runs forward and picks up good matchups in the forward line. It's a really nice role for Petrarca. He's definitely in your VC calculations, him and Noah Anderson, and what should be a dominant win for the Gold Coast Suns. We look forward to the 4:15 game over in Western Sydney. This is the Giants taking on St. Kilda. Now, the Giants are favoured by 10 points. They're currently $1.57 with Sports Bet. I think the Giants will send the Saints to be 0-3. I say that because they play that ground well. It seems to be a decent matchup for the Giants, and the Saints, to me, haven't played much inspiring football without Nazire Wanganeen-Miller putting on the Superman cape and becoming, I don't know, a different version of Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan or even, I don't know, Nick Rewald. I'm thinking of some great players. He can't do that right now. He needs to be everything for St. Kilda, and without him being the player he was in the back end of last season, they're just not that good of a team. We may have overestimated St. Kilda, myself included. If they had to start 0-3, it is a long way back to finals. Now, I know there are 10 teams in the finals right now due to this new final system, which I'm not a big fan of, which gives St. Kilda more of a chance to qualify and play some big games at the end of the year. But I just think the Giants are looking a little bit better right now. They played pretty poorly against the Doggies last weekend. It's not quite the same midfield they'll come up against when they play St. Kilda. The likes of Toby Green and Jesse Hogan, I think, will do enough to score enough for the Giants to win this contest, despite their multiple injuries. But it is going to be a close one. SuperCoach-wise, a lot of us own Jack Sinclair. Represents a decent matchup for Jack Sinclair. GWS, Lockie Whitfield, Lockie Ash. We know how well defenders have scored against St. Kilda in the past, and we've seen it early in the year as well with Josh Dacos having nearly a career day, 136 points, I think, in opening round. Obviously, his career day was against the Gold Coast Suns last year when he scored 198 points in SuperCoach. But I do think halfbacks will do quite well in this game. A lot of people are trading in Joe Fonte, who's just under $300,000 in SuperCoach. I don't hate that selection. My only question would be, where's the history of scoring from him? He scored 130-ish points in opening round, followed by an 80 last week at Marvel Stadium. Looked to be freeing him up to intercept as well as his smooth kicking, but I'm just not completely sold on a mid-price selection. If you're trading out a Hayden Young or you're trading out another failed mid-pricer, I think you probably admit defeat and say, okay, Joe Fonte might make $100,000, but I'm going to have to flip him pretty soon. I'd rather get in someone that's safe, that's secure, that you know is going to be a top 6 to 8 defender, or you just wait 1 week, try and pick off Dan Houston once he's named, and see how that lands. I don't dislike Joe Fonte. He's a good player. I saw some really good signs over the last 2 weeks. I'm just not a massive fan of trading into a mid-pricer whose best score was in opening round, and it will be the first score to filter out. Let's look forward to Saturday night football. It is Fremantle taking on Melbourne. Fremantle are favoured by 20 points over in the west at Optus Stadium. This should be an interesting game. And we know Luke Jackson was absolutely dominant last week in Geelong, scoring 150-ish SuperCoach points. It was the big one. Let me get his actual score up here. But he was dominant last weekend against Geelong, had 27 touches and a goal. He looks to be one of the must-own players in SuperCoach, but it is early days. He was up against a first gamer in Mitch Edwards. 142 points it was last Saturday afternoon. Today is a bit different. Well, Saturday is going to be very different. He plays Max Gawn, the best ruckman I have ever seen. Now, I saw Simon Madden walking down the street the other day, and I said, that looks like a good ruckman. But Max Gawn looks even better than that guy, okay? Because Max Gawn is simply different. He played 91% time on ground in round one against Tom de Koning. How are you going to stop someone that's running marathons, that's cycling the Pyrenees every other day? He's just too fit. He will run you into the ground. He is such a great contested mark. He's added this goals to his game. I know, it's hard to stop him. So Jackson faces a much tougher test in the form of most likely a solo Max Gawn. Can't wait to watch this one on Saturday night. I do think the Dockers, though, will be too strong for them. The likes of Caleb Sarong and hopefully Brayshaw can step up in this one. Now, Sarong was fantastic in the last quarter against Geelong on Saturday. He had about 80 SuperCoach points, probably a career high for him as he went on his way to 150 rankings points. But I think this one just be an easy one for Fremantle. I don't think it'll be dominant, but I don't think it'll ever be in true danger, as their quality is just a little bit more than this somewhat inexperienced Melbourne team, which has had a lot of turnover over the off-season, despite the fact they look pretty impressive against St. Kilda for large periods of last Sunday's game. Line of 20 points, that's probably around bang on. I don't know if Freo have the offensive power to really put the foot down on Melbourne, who looked pretty strong across the field last weekend. Yeah, it's a tough line, that one. I think Freo will win, but I'm not confident in betting on anyone and any line apparently right now. Disposals-wise, I mean, obviously, Sarong, Brayshaw are due for a bounce back. Probably going to have a little bit more in-depth look at the disposals on X. Just a little bit pressed for time right now. So just giving you the tips and what I think SuperCoach-wise and who's going to play well across the weekend. We look forward to Sunday afternoon football now. And it is Port Adelaide taking on Essendon. Port Adelaide are $1.40 favourites. The line is 17 points. Essendon were truly disgusting last Friday night against Hawthorn. Never seen a team more ill-prepared or ill-fitting to play in prime time. They were not quite ready for prime time, those Bombers. The way they moved, or the way they didn't move in transition, was horrifying to see. It was like watching one of those A24 horror films where you just know what's going to happen at the end. You know there's going to be some horrific murder, but instead it happened from the second quarter till the very end of the game. Essendon are truly terrifying to watch, and not in a good way. Who do I think will win? I think Port Adelaide will win, despite the fact North Melbourne pants them last Sunday afternoon. The line, I think Essendon might actually cover that line, and that's a dangerous thing to say. Last time I said that, the Doggies beat Essendon by about 80 points, but I do think they'll be way more competitive this week, despite the fact it is Port Adelaide's home opener. Disposal side of things, I mean, you can look at Darcy Parish, you can look at even a Zach Merritt. Port Adelaide are very unlikely to employ a tag in this game. I think Zach Butters is one to get off the chain after a poor game last week. I know his odds are never quite great, but at home, it's rare he has two bad games back to back. So I'm looking at Butters and I'm looking at Rosie for this one. I know it is very chalky, but the Stars always seem to cut Essendon apart. You could even look at like a Mitch Georgiades or even a Todd Marshall to have maybe 10 to 15 touches. Essendon, the way they use the football is just disgraceful. So intercept markers like a Marshall should do well in this game, particularly in SuperCoach, as he has been declared healthy. And Georgiades, well, if he gets the Ben Mackay matchup, it can go two ways. Ben Mackay might lock him away. He might not kick one goal, or he might kick 7 on him. It just, you never know what version of Essendon's going to show up and how poor defensively they may be. But I do think Port will take this game out, and Essendon will be 0-2, and we'll be looking down the barrel of the longest losing streak in the last 25 years. So Essendon, I think, have lost 16 games in a row. If you take out the expansion teams, the record's like 17, 18, 19 losses. If Essendon lose to North Melbourne next week, what's going to happen? There's not going to be any pressure on Brad Scott. He just got extended. But Essendon are staring down the worst losing streak in the last 25 years. Something has to change. You can't just keep doing this every single week. This team is so far from the top level. It can't compete with the good teams. It's sometimes within a couple of goals of mediocre teams, and they beat the shit teams every now and again, but lose to them also. So I'm just struggling to see how the future is going to pan out for Essendon, because it looks very, very dire and very, very bleak right now. Let's go to the last game of the round. It is West Coast taking on North Melbourne over in Perth. Now, West Coast must think they're a chance in this one. The line is only 12.5 points in North Melbourne's favour. If you remember 12 months ago, not even, maybe 9 months ago, North Melbourne defeated West Coast over at Hands Oval in Bunbury in what was a very close contest. Tristan Sherry was utterly dominant in that game. Now, the ruck rules have changed, and Tristan Sherry can't really jump. I can't really jump if you watch that game against Port Adelaide last Sunday. Didn't win a single centre hit out. He wasn't able to compete with a very inexperienced ruckman in Dante Vincentini, but around the grounds, he was utterly dominant in the ruck stoppages and in the grapples. I'm hoping as a Sherry owner, he can do something similar this week. I don't mind his disposal line. I also don't mind Fino Sullivan's disposal line. He had 15 touches last week, but he only had, I think, 1 or 2 in the last quarter. His main responsibility was locking away Port Adelaide star Zach Butters. He did a great job of that. Butters had 23 disposals, and Port Adelaide lost by 10 goals. So I don't mind O'Sullivan, and he could potentially be a replacement for Hayden Young, but I'd like to see one more week with him off this role. And of course, Sheasel's going to have heaps of touches. The stars from North Melbourne, Luke Davies-Uniacke, should do well in this game, although LU doesn't have a strong record against West Coast, of late. And on the West Coast side of things, you know everything about Milan Murdoch already. You know everything about Milan Murdoch because he's the only player I talk about. If you see him, then you'll know that I'm his biggest fan. Because just look at him. He's a nuggety little 25, 26-year-old out of Western Australia. And the one thing he does is competes every single time the ball is in his vicinity. He's one of the fittest players in the waffle last year. The step up to the AFL hasn't seemed to be any sort of worry for him. He just gets in there, rolls those damn sleeves up, and gets to work. I think he's a tremendous pick in AFL Fantasy and in SuperCoach. If you want to go this week, you can. He's not on the bubble just yet, but with a 110 in his 3-round rolling average, he's going to be putting up a very nice price increase coming up in the following weeks. He's a must-own for mine, a 99K-er. I think North Melbourne will win this game. The line of 13 points, if you're big on North Melbourne, they really should cover that, but I'm a bit toey on it. I think West Coast are going to be competitive in this one. 6:10 our time here in Melbourne, 3:10 local time in Perth. It's sure to be a nice sunny day, and we're going to see hopefully North Ball take over in Western Australia. We can really see some improvement from this group because losing the West Coast would be a step backwards considering how dominant they were against Port Adelaide only 7 days prior. Only 7 days beforehand, North Melbourne looked like the 1999 Kangaroos, okay? It was different opposition than playing against Carlton. Maybe not. Carlton aren't very good, but you understand what I'm saying. North Melbourne have made strides. They've improved. We want to see them do it consistently because the 3-0 start is then on the horizon with Essendon coming up next Saturday night. That's the preview for round 2 of the AFL season. Just an abridged version today. Just a 20-minute podcast because I'm a little bit pressed for time. I do apologise. I'll be heading out to Pascoe quite soon, actually, to talk to former North Melbourne and Gold Coast player Daniel Harris, who's now taking the reins as senior coach of Pascoe Vale. He was the senior coach at the back end of last season, but they've had some huge off-season acquisitions in the form of Todd Goldstein and Jed Anderson. So it will be very exciting to talk to another senior coach here in the EDFL. What's going to be a big year for the competition. I'm excited to be aboard the media team this season. And yeah, I cannot wait for the whole thing to get underway. Good Friday is only just around the corner. Footy is here to stay. Friday night football, doggies, crows. Hope you'll enjoy it. Hope you get your captaincy and vice captaincy right in SuperCoach. Let's get it done. Let it all unfold. This was Slam Talk Sports. Hope you all enjoyed it. I'll talk to you later in the week. And yes, I didn't pick Bont and I'm still cursing about it. Please leave me alone.